welcome everybody. Let's give everybody a couple minutes to get settled as we typically do. So just give me 1 minute here, and then I'll introduce myself. For those of you that are here for the first time, say hello again to our regulars, and we'll get it going. Is anybody on here? Was anybody on here at down in NACAC in Baltimore, or down for me up in Boston this past week? Yeah, it's really good. we thought it was a great conference. I thought they did a great job. Got to meet a ton of sorry, miss some of you guys. Got to meet a ton of you all, right? So it was really fun to put some names to the faces. We have our I'm forgetting, but we had one of our super fans, and I'll find you. If you're on, please identify yourself. But from Hawaii, makes it a tradition every other Wednesday to listen to us at 6 a.m. her time. So we are looking at, and of course we'll make the announcement 2 weeks from now, if it's not 2 weeks from now, maybe a month from now, doing a special, because she made a request to say 6 a.m. is a little bit early, tough time for me as I'm trying to get it rolling, get out of the house. So we said, look, we'll do a special time for you. So we're going to do 3 Eastern time in either 2 weeks again, or a couple months, but we'll make sure that we, or a couple weeks rather, we'll make sure that we put that in an email, let everybody know. But we got to take care of our Hawaii folks there that are so dedicated. And I think we'll even have a guest appearance if, yeah, Berta. I think Berta was the name. That sounds right. Yeah, thank you. So I thought that was pretty cool. So anyways, we had a great conference. I don't know if any of you saw, we had 2 opportunities to speak. I was on the Princeton Review, had me do a segment on the FAFSA changes on Thursday. That was really cool. They had an amazing setup. Those guys got a couple bucks to spend. So it was like being in a world-class like TV studio. It felt like. And then Rob Franek, if any of you guys know him, he's kind of like the test prep guy. He's been on the Today Show 37 times, 38 times. And then there's a Good Morning America Today Show. I always mess it up. But anyways, he was very grateful that he had us in there. And then Peg and myself spoke at one of the solutions showcase on Friday morning. We had a huge crowd. We were really grateful. I mean, like 200 something people came, and they only had seats for like 100. So everybody was sitting on the floor and standing up. So that was a thrill for us. And, hopefully got folks educated on these FAFSA changes, which still remains the hot topic, as I think it will at least through this year. So for those of you that are new, my name is Matt Carpenter, and we do these every other week, right? We being College Aid Pro, and our goal is to just kind of be a sounding board for school counselors, right? So talk about what's topical. Usually at least once a month, we'll focus on specific subject matter, right? So a couple of weeks ago, we did this great, I thought it was a really cool kind of study. Kudos to our data team. There's about 8 people that took part in this, to go study net price calculators from colleges' websites. How reliable or not are they versus how our own projections are? And it was illuminating, right? I wasn't shocked, but we got great feedback from that. Really interesting, because I think most school counselors are like, when families ask about prices, we send them to the net price calculators, and turns out oftentimes they're wildly misleading, inaccurate, whatever. And the history of that was really, I think, illuminating for people. What certainly was for us. And the fact that there's no oversight, you don't have to update it. Some people are using a net price calculator from 2008. Some people, colleges, not one college has their own net price calculator. There's not one college in the country that makes their own net price calculator. They all outsource them to a third party. And again, there's no kind of accountability factor there. And there's also no solution for divorced or separated families. So split households cannot use the net price calculator. The best thing that they can do is each household maybe uses it and they add them together, but that is a very inexact science. So the study fortunately made us look kind of good in terms of being a better source of truth, but you know, that was it. And again, I know a lot of the feedback was like, oh my God, what are we supposed to do? I mean, and it's just, again, we wanted, and it's depressing to hear, and I'm seeing the comments here. I still don't think it's bad advice, right? Because at a minimum, you are still saying, look, don't just take the concept that is very important, that I think you're still kind of preaching, is don't rule out of school because of what it appears to cost, because of its cost of attendance, the sticker price on the surface, right? For most people, that's irrelevant. But again, we pride ourselves on being the source of truth. And even if you're a school that's like, hey, we can't just send people to College Aid Pro because that's whatever, there's a level of discomfort there. Send them to College Aid Pro in addition to the net price calculator, right? And just have another resource to say, hey, go check, you know, Boston College's net price calculator and also use this one. And you know, hopefully between the two of those, you get some gauge of where your family is likely to land. But yeah, that one for divorced, separated, split household families is true. We also haven't seen any college yet. And then there's 4,000 colleges that we monitor. So it's not to say one couldn't slip through the cracks, but we haven't seen any colleges. I haven't checked with the team this week either, but update their net price calculators to account for the new FAFSA rules yet either, right? Business owners, divorce separated, sibling discounts. So I don't, again, that's not to say it hasn't happened yet, but we haven't seen it yet. And we have a technology that spies on every single college admissions and financial aid website. So if they make any changes, we get notified right away and we can make sure that our feedback loop is up to date in real time. So, okay. Yeah. And a question here that some school counselors, thank you, by the way, signed our petition to try to prevent the FAFSA rule that no longer takes into account multiple siblings in college at once. Are we going to be able to prevent that from going through? We got 70,000 signatures, basically decision makers, powers that be said, unless we get 100,000 signatures, nothing's going to happen. We didn't get that. I don't know that anything would have happened anyways, but like barring something wildly unexpected here, barring a real monkey wrench at the finish line, that rule is going through. That sibling discount at the federal methodology schools is going away. So that's, you know, unfortunately nothing that I promise you we gave it our best efforts, but it's very, very unlikely. And it's a couple of things that I'll just kind of show you here. And this is a case where if we have more than one kid in school at once, right, no longer are we going to get that break for colleges that use the federal SAI. Remember, SAI is the terminology that is replacing EFC. So EFC, expected family contribution, this acronym, right, this college world of acronyms that we live in, is going away. That is being replaced with SAI, Student Aid Index, right? I think that's going to solve little to nothing, but it is what it is. That's the new terminology. Schools that use the federal SAI, basically, the expectation has to be they're no longer going to honor the sibling discount. Now, there's a lot of private colleges that use the federal SAI as kind of their business model, as their basic formula for determining need-based financial aid eligibility. They're still going to have the option to use it, right? Kind of our little birdies tell us that it's very rare, or it's going to be rare that colleges keep that sibling rule, but they have the option, right? Especially if they're a private school, they can still give a break for siblings. Certainly that is true for the colleges that use what's called the institutional SAI, right? So shouldn't say most, a lot of colleges, specifically those that require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA, they use the institutional SAI. And there is a range, okay? There is a range in what the institutional SAI is. The institutional SAI basically ignores the FAFSA. The FAFSA is a formality there. It doesn't matter, okay? That's why a lot of these private colleges, when it comes to the ED and EA deadlines, right, early decision and early action deadlines, they're not pushing them back at all, even though the FAFSA is not going to be available until December-ish. Because if they use the CSS profile, they only award aid based on the CSS profile anyways. Okay, again, the FAFSA doesn't matter. It is just a formality. So the CSS profile, and by the way, it is actually available now. It became available last week. The College Board has traditionally, the last few years, about 5 years now, done a soft opening of the CSS profile where they only announce publicly that it's going to be open October 1st, but you can actually get a head start, and you would have been able to last week, and access and even submit the CSS profile now. I think they've done this really smart thing where they do this soft launch to work out any bugs so that when it actually does become accessible to, or the public announcement is October 1st, they've flushed out a lot of their bugs for that new year CSS profile already. Of course, it'll crash for the first week and change at least. I mean, the CSS profile will crash the first, and just as the new FAFSA will as well. From about October 1st to October 7th, it'll crash a lot more often than it does not. So basically, don't bother that first week. And that's all those folks that think if they get it in early, they're going to get more money, when really they're only going to get, you're entitled to the maximum amount of money so long as you hit the priority deadlines. Whether you get in October 1st or November 1st doesn't matter. Now, if you have a priority deadline of November 1st and you get in November 2nd, that could matter. So anyways, that's how you want to coach that in your community. But these schools that use the CSS profile and the institutional SAI, there's a range for what that number could be for a few reasons. Number one, just because the school uses the institutional SAI, it's not all the same formula the way that most public schools do that use the federal SAI, right? The biggest one is usually home equity, right? If we're a homeowner, some colleges look at all the home equity, and they're going to say if your home's worth 500 and you owe 200, we think that Boston College, we think that's a $300,000 savings account. Okay. Whereas Amherst College here, we see that you're a homeowner. We collected the CSS profile, but we're not going to hold that against you. Or maybe we're Boston University that's not going to hold all of it against you, but we will hold some of it against you, right? And of course, there's everything in between. So that's a big reason that there's a range for schools that use the institutional SAI. Okay. Yeah, and in terms of how do they estimate the worth of the home, Zillow, Redfin, Redtail, I mean, these are, or it's Redfin. There's another one that they use. A lot of times listen, this is where it comes down to the individual. This is where it comes down to the individual, not only college, but financial aid counselor, right? So you have individuals, human beings that are providing, that are putting together these financial aid packages. So if I complete my CSS profile and I say my home's worth $500,000, some financial aid counselors someday just say, fine, good enough, that seems right. Some financial aid counselors will always gut check it. They'll always say, hey, my process is, I'm going to see what it says, what Zillow says. Some colleges, it's, if it sounds off to them, right? I live in the Boston area, just north of Boston. Real estate's pretty expensive here. So if somebody says their home's worth $250,000 and I'm applying to a college that's relatively local here, for these colleges, or for these financial aid counselors that like to make judgment calls, they might say, Beverly, Massachusetts, family of four, $250,000 home value, that seems wonky to me. I'm going to fact check it and see what Zillow says. Zillow says it's worth $500,000, not $250,000. That's the value I'm going to use when assessing your financial aid eligibility, right? So it works a few ways. Schools kind of have their policies, but then it's the individuals within those schools that are ultimately going to kind of dictate whether or not they gut check it. And if they do, those are usually two of the sources. Okay. Yeah, of course. I mean, Sarah, that hopefully that goes without saying, guys. You still got to do the FAFSA for CSS profile schools, right? It's like I said, but it's a formality. It's not going to have anything to do it's not going to do anything to determine your financial aid eligibility or lack thereof. In order to be eligible for the federal funds, whether you're eligible for Pell Grants or the Federal Direct Student Loan Program, you just got to check that box, right? So it's a box you got to check. And again, it's not going to dictate how much financial aid you get or you don't get. I guess unless you make a big mistake on it, right? Then it could work not in your favor. And yeah, it's a good point too that after the CSS profile gets submitted, that most of the time, it's not for every CSS profile school, but most CSS profile schools use something called IDOC, which is essentially a central processing center for tax returns, W-2s, et cetera, verifying documents where a lot of CSS profile schools will say, hey, don't send your tax returns and W-2s to us. We're part of College Board. Send them to the IDOC, which again is the name of this kind of processing center. They want a specific way in which tax returns, W-2s, et cetera, are uploaded. And then, this central processing center will get that information to the relevant colleges that participate in it. But it's always good. We're always coaching up our families to say, like, kind of just when you think you're done with this process, we submitted the FAFSA, we submitted our CSS profile, I think we're done. And then almost immediately after, it's usually they give you 24 hours, but you get an email from the College Board saying, hey, now we need to submit these documents to IDOC, right? Because some of the colleges that you've applied to require this part of the process. So yeah, it's a great call. It's another cumbersome part of the process, and a lot of times it can just kind of be emotionally exhausting because you feel like you're done and you check the big boxes, and now here you go with some more hoops to jump through, right? And then you have your schools, your UPenns of the world, for example, that have a third application, FAFSA CSS profile, in their own institutional application, and that's the biggest beast of them all, right? And that's the longest, most labor intensive part of their financial aid application process. So the takeaway there, the headline, is that you need to put the onus on the families, right? That it is up to them to figure out who requires what, when do they require it, how do they require it, right? Because a lot of these families are used to probably the communication that you provide to them now, which is pretty hands-on, pretty, okay, guys, we need your transcripts by here, we need your teacher recommendations by here, we need to know where you're applying early by here. You're constantly nudging them, holding their hands. The colleges are not going to do this, okay? It is up to them to figure out, okay, I'm applying early decision to Princeton. I need to know that in addition to the FAFSA, which won't be accessible yet, they don't use the CSS profile. They have their own institutional application, term and need-based financial aid. And if I'm divorced or separated, they're going to require that from the other household as well, right? Princeton's not necessarily going to communicate that home. And a lot of times this communication will go only to the kids. So it's all about coaching these families, but be super proactive. As this list is coming to fruition, you need to go proactively seek out their financial aid offices to say, what do you need in addition to the FAFSA, if anything? When do you need it? How do you need it, et cetera? Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, look, yeah, and this is something we always are tracking as well. And again, it's a moving target because colleges can and do change from one year to the next. Let's say we're a family that definitely is not going to qualify for need-based financial aid, right? Do we still need to do the FAFSA and where it's relevant, the CSS profile, in order to qualify for merit? Depends on the school. Plenty of colleges, the answer is no, right? So long your hat's going to be thrown in the ring for merit-based consideration just by applying to the college through their typical channels, right? It's probably also noteworthy to say that some schools, as you probably know, but again, this messaging is important because I know a lot of families don't know, that some schools in a meaningful percentage have their own scholarship applications beyond just the standard process. And these are great opportunities because a lot of them don't market it very well, or intentionally, very passively. So they're not getting a ton of applicants. They're only getting applicants that are seeking them out to say, hey, is this one of the schools that offers scholarships outside of the standard just applying to the college? Let me throw my hat in the ring for those, do the extra essay, whatever. Okay. That's noteworthy. The other thing is there are some schools that, again, in order to be considered for merit-based scholarships, you have to do the FAFSA and the CSS profile. NYU is one we always pick on because, again, that's one of the more popular schools in the country. And if you want to be considered for merit, got to do the FAFSA, got to do the CSS. Your financial aid eligibility status does not matter. Okay. One of the great guys on our team, Mike Hinderman, right? He's the director of scholarships at the University of Oklahoma. If you want to be considered for appeals, any type of appeal, whether it's merit or need-based, you have to do the FAFSA. So it's just kind of interesting how just another example of, you just want to be dialed in with these colleges. Now, we'll recommend for all the families that we work with that you do the FAFSA and the CSS profile, even if you don't apply for financial aid. So you can say, I'm not, when they ask you in the comment app, are you applying for financial aid? You can say no. Okay. Now we know we're not going to be eligible for need-based aid then, but we can still do the FAFSA and the CSS, A, to qualify for merit, and then B, when we do the FAFSA, as most of you know, but this is a great perk if you work with families that are, or some families have higher income, more means, more resources, right? This is a tip that they all love. Okay. Is that if you do the FAFSA, the student becomes eligible to borrow the federal direct student loan, right? So that's 27 grand over the course of 4 years, 5,500 freshman year, 6,500 sophomore year, 7,500 junior and senior year. So 27,000 over the course of 4 years. If you want your kids to have any skin in the game, there's no better way to do it than through that program, right? Low fixed interest rate. They don't need a cosigner. They don't need established credit. They're not going to get a bill until 6 months after they graduate from college. If you want your kids to have skin in the game, start there, do the FAFSA. Great. Well, there are plenty of those families are going to say, we don't want our kids to have skin in the game. We don't need our kids to have skin in the game. Well, great. You guys are fortunate. So do this. Do that program. Take that loan out each year, pay it back instantaneously each year before any interest accrues. Now the kids graduate with established credit, right? So because that loan is technically just in their name, you pay it for them. They're 22 years old. They graduate from college. They can sign their own lease. They can lease their own car because they have established credit as 22-year-olds because they borrowed and paid back 27 grand. So it's a really, really nice perk, kind of a rich get richer type of perk. But my takeaway from that, my headline is you have to talk me out of why it's not a good reason to leverage that program in some capacity. Okay, so can dual citizen parents complete the FAFSA? Yes. Okay, so long as they are okay. They can complete the FAFSA, but they're in order for their parents to submit and sign the FAFSA, one of their parents would need to be a citizen. So dual citizenship is no problem, right? There's no problem so long as one of those citizenships, that's a tough one, is the United States, right? And it would have to be one parent. So it does become problematic and challenging if neither parent is a citizen of the US. Oops. Oh, let me go grab what I was. So look like I said, we are going to talk ad nauseum about about these FAFSA changes for the foreseeable future, right? Just because they're so important this year and they're just such a challenge. That we just, and it's so important that you just get these things right. And what I am doing, if I can find this thing, there you are. I'm putting in the chat here my link, right? If we don't work with your school right now, I recommend just book a little time with me so you can learn a little bit more. And whenever we jump here, I'll share a little bit more details about how we partner with schools, the education we provide. It's all the education is free, the platform that parents have access to, school counselors have access to, that we kind of talk, we say it's like the score and naviance of financial aid, but let's at least talk to learn what you're doing currently, and then you can learn more about how we partner with schools, and that's the best way to do it. Book a time with me, and I just put that in the link there. Okay, but let me see, let me get a question here. Yeah, so I mean, look, I think this is a totally fair question, and we've worked through this before. But so this is from a counselor that worked on the college side and didn't. It sounds like the terminology they used is saw it as a red flag, or didn't thought there was maybe some tactics going on or some gamesmanship when a family didn't said they're not applying for financial aid, but still completed the FAFSA and CSS profile. So what we've done in these cases is again, I attack the colleges a lot or I shouldn't say attack, I vilify the colleges a lot for a lack of transparency. We got to do the same thing on our end as consumers, right? We can't say they're not transparent and then we do a version of that ourselves, right? I think it works both ways. So when we do this, right, first you got to educate the family. If you say that you're not applying for need-based financial aid, you're not getting any need-based financial aid. That's what you're telling the school. That is what you are communicating. Don't consider us for need-based financial aid. But we can also, that doesn't mean we don't have to borrow or don't need to borrow or don't want to borrow or don't want merit-based scholarships, right? So what we have done is when a family does this, we have them write to the financial aid office and to the admissions office to say, hey, we did not check the box on the Common App that we're applying for aid. We understand what we are signing up for. However, we'd still like to complete the financial and submit the financial aid applications for two reasons. Number one, if you are a college that requires this in order to be eligible for merit-based scholarships, we want to make sure that we are considered for that. We would also like to take advantage of the federal direct student loan program to which we are entitled by completing the FAFSA. And we haven't got any pushback. Obviously, I haven't been in every room, and maybe it rubs some colleges the wrong way. But I would say the overwhelming feedback that I have been privy to in these situations is appreciate your transparency. We get it. Thanks for the heads up. That's been our experience, right? Maybe again, maybe some colleges didn't like it, but didn't express that. I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, I don't work for a college. We don't work for colleges. We're not advocates for colleges. We're advocates for families. And so we will always err on the side of, in a judgment call situation, we'll always err on a side that we think is going to be best for the families, not for the colleges. So if we're wrong anywhere, we're going to always miss on that side. And if it rubs some colleges the wrong way, that's not the intention. That's not a goal. But it's also not our priority. Our priority is these students and their parents, and that's just the side of the fence that we're coming from, and I don't think that will ever change. But who knows? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So another kind of good question here is, and we could apply this to a bunch of things, right? So the question or comment is, there's a bunch of parents that are at retirement age during these years, right? As they're sending their kids off to college, applying to college, they have just retired or are about to retire, whatever. They're going through this major transition themselves. How do we handle that, right? As most of you know, when you complete the FAFSA and you complete the CSS profile, you're not completing these in paragraph form, right? By and large, it's what's your adjusted gross income in 2022? Next question, right? So there's not a lot of color that's being provided here, and we want to keep it that way. Now, I'll be interested to see whomever just commented that was on the college side of the fence. I would love to see if you have a differing opinion here, but we work with a lot of financial aid counselors are on our team, right? There are some of the experts that our families or school counselors can meet with, right? So I mentioned Mike at University of Oklahoma. JP used to be the financial aid director at USC, Harvard, MIT, Denison, a couple schools that are they're not, the schools aren't affiliated with us. Let me be clear on that. The individuals that work or did work for these institutions are on our team here. But here's how we coach it. Now, retirement was one thing, right? But there's a ton of families that you're gonna touch this year that are going to be going through some type of transition that's different than it was in 2022, right? So class 2024, they're looking at our 2022 tax returns. And that's really it initially. There's going to be folks that got divorced or separated since then, right? That our tax filing status is going to be different. Address is going to be different. They got a job, they lost a job. Any number of these kind of life events. And our recommendation is just answer the questions initially. Okay. And here's where I'm curious to see for whoever used to work on the college side, if you worked at a CSS profile school, we coach our families. And again, this is largely based on kind of the inside baseball information we get, to leave that kind of blank section on the CSS profile blank. Okay. Don't answer questions. We don't have to. There's a ton of optional questions on the CSS profile. Answer the questions we have to answer, send it off to the colleges, see what they come back with. And then we're going to come back. We're going to come back in the appeal process to bring new information. I'm retired. I'm now divorced or separated. These types of things. So that's kind of the order of operations in terms of when and how we disclose this information to the colleges. The only exception I would make there is on the FAFSA. If we have since been divorced or separated from 2022, we'll want to manually break apart the income and assets and want to just show the information of whoever's going to be completing that FAFSA, right, as single or head of household, just include their income and assets, et cetera, on the FAFSA, knowing full well we're going to have to go through the verification process with all these schools to document, here's what's happened since then, here's the current status, et cetera, et cetera. But great question, but essentially here, how I'd coach it is, answer the questions the way they're being asked initially, get your initial offers, and then we're going to circle back during the appeal process to show what's going on today. And again, specifically, whatever counselor was on the college side of the fence, I'd love to hear if there's a dissenting opinion there. But anyways, that's certainly how we coach it, and we coach it that way with and that's supported by a lot of data and evidence that is the right way to do it. Okay. Let me just 1 second. So as always, bombs away with any more questions if and when they should arise. Whoops. Sorry, guys. But for those that don't have any familiarity with how we partner with schools, right? There's we have what we call this two-pronged approach, right? And it's part education, and then it's part technology. Okay, so we provide, we've evolved towards having this one, most schools, and I'm sure you guys either have done or do a version of this, you do your one catch-all presentation with the local financial aid office, right? Somebody comes out, local community college or four-year college, and explains, here's how the FAFSA works, and here's the, cost of attendance minus SAI equals need, and terminology, deadlines, et cetera. And we have this one or two catch-all presentations, but what we found is even if we do a perfect presentation in September, nobody's going to remember the difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized loan in March. We have to talk about what's 6 inches in front of people's face, especially this year with these insane FAFSA changes, whatever. So we do our kind of one foundational presentation in the fall. We recommend the spring too, but we like to start spring with juniors, come back and do it again in the fall, kind of up the ante a little bit. Obviously this year, huge focus on the FAFSA changes. Then we'll come back in October, line by line and strategy through the CSS profile, come back in December, line by line and strategy through the FAFSA, come back after New Year in January. Okay, now it's time to go get private scholarships. Come back in March. Here's how to read your award letter. Here's how to appeal for more. Come back after May 1st. Okay, families, you know where you're going. You know what it's going to cost. How are we going to pay for this? So if you're a family that has resources to use 529 UGMA or grandparent money first. If you're a family that has to borrow, should you use the PLUS loan? Should you use SoFi, Sally Mae, or your state program, whatever it happens to be? So that's kind of our standard template in terms of the curriculum, right? We are the best experts in the world. You're not going to find any more experienced, kind of well-versed folks. We always do it with two people, so whoever's not talking can be in the Q&A. A beautiful thing about things being virtual now is this ability for people to ask their questions anonymously. So we can ask a really personal question, right? I'm going through this gnarly divorce. I can't get a hold of my ex. What do I do? They have an audience, right? And usually a lot of families don't like to ask that in front of their peers. So that's been a nice silver lining about going virtual here. And then we have our software, right? That again, we like to call our Naviance of financial aid or scholarships, where every family has their own account. If the school purchases licenses, okay, the school counselor has an account, okay? If not, no matter what, the family has their account. So they see what's my SAI. Like I said at the beginning, we have the most robust, most accurate net price calculator for any school in the country. We try to help them figure out, okay, not just 1 year, but what's it going to cost 4 years next to your budget? How much would you have to borrow to go to the school if that's where you end up, right? Something that we found is really popular, or not popular, but resonates with the high school kids. They don't know what it means to borrow 50,000 versus 70,000 versus 35,000, but they understand this first monthly payment, right? They can wrap their head around, okay, I don't know what it means to borrow 70 grand, but I do put $753 a month for my first monthly payment. That seems like a lot, right? And it gives you school counselors visibility into, okay, I know in your sleep, you can recommend the best fits for these kids academically, culturally, geographically, all that stuff. But I think a lot of times you're flying blind in terms of, am I recommending affordable schools for this family or not, right? Is this a great outcome for this family, or is this something that, you know, they want to be more cautious with? So I think that's a real, we're trying to fill that void there. Every private scholarship in the country is baked in here, line by line instructions of the FAFSA and the CSS profile. This is a really awesome part of the platform where families upload their financial aid award letters. We instantly translate them. So we take these 900 different ways that financial aid award letters are presented and put them into one uniform way. And then we tell them if they got a fair deal, right? So that's kind of a quick tour of the platform. Again, you know, we encourage you to go set up your own account if you haven't already. Just to bang around in there. Sorry, let me go show you what I was showing you earlier, if I can find it. There we go. And then again, in terms of the X's and O's of how we partner with schools, plenty of the schools we partner with, they have exactly zero budget. They have negative budget, right? If this sounds like your school, that's okay. Plenty of the schools we partner with, there's no budget. We provide the education for free. Every family has access to the platform, a free version of it, okay? And if they want to upgrade, they can upgrade on their own, except for free and reduced lunch families. They'll get all the bells and whistles for free. And then there's high schools that have some budget, and they can pay for licenses for everybody, and they can have their own school counselor admin account, and then we'll do we'll provide the curriculum, the education just for them. So again, if that's something that sounds interesting, or you want to learn more in any capacity, please book some time with me. Like I said, and you'll continue to hear me say, because it is true. We are filling up. Oh, I didn't even put this link in the chat, but here's my link if you want to book some time with me. We are filling up, man. We are filling up. So, okay, do you have any input on how accurate, strong you think the My Intuition calculator is? So My Intuition calculator, generally speaking, I would say is one of the stronger ones out there. So this is, again, one of these, I mentioned earlier, if you weren't on, there's not one college that has their own net price calculator. They're all outsourced to a third party. My Intuition, Department of Education, College Board, College Raptor are a couple of the names of these companies. My Intuition, I think, is, if it's not the most accurate one, it's up there. I think one of the biggest challenges is a lot of those take between half hour-ish to complete. I'm thinking of Clark University was and I believe they use My Intuition. We found that to be a really, really accurate calculator, but it's 70 questions. Ours is 12. So it's just a fairly labor intensive, but it's worth it to me to find out, did you get an accurate? Here's what you're going to pay to come here if you get in, right? That's what we're trying to determine. So yeah, My Intuition is say. Another thing we just flagged though is that all these colleges too, they don't have any oversight with these third-party net price calculators. And just tell parents that care about this, tell them to read the fine print in terms of what they're agreeing to by using the calculator, because they all say, listen, we are going to be packaging and selling your data, essentially. So for plenty of people, that's like the cost of doing business. Again, to me, I'm like, that's the cost of it. We don't. Okay, we do think that's a differentiator for us. That's not a part of our revenue model. But if you read the fine print of these third-party net price calculators, that's most of them, that's their revenue model, right? They're not going to charge the families to do the net price calculator, but they are going to repackage and sell their data. And then the colleges will pay a couple bucks for it. Okay. Yeah, so same thing, right? So same, this is this question, it's the same concept as if we are retiring or we had some kind of event in 2022, we would want to bring this to the attention of the colleges after we receive our award letter and we want to appeal for more money, right? So the question was, what if we got a bonus? 2022 was a weird year. 2023, we're going back to normal. 2021 was normal. 22, we're getting whacked, right? We got to complete the FAFSA, we got to complete the CSS profile, we get an offer, and we go appeal. That's how we'd want to handle that. So I'll stick around for another minute or two if we have any more questions. Otherwise, we'll send us on our merry way. And again, yeah, right. So correct. So we are kind of, again, everybody's net. One feature that we offer is everybody's net price calculator all in one place, right? You don't have to go anywhere else. I mean, and just to give you an idea of what that looks like quickly, let me just share again. Right, so somebody just throw out a college in the chat here. Throw out a college. Okay, so University of Michigan. Daisy. Okay, Ann Arbor. Okay, so their sticker price is going to be 74 next year. We're going to pay 60. Why? Why is that? Well, we can dig into that. Okay, and if we want to. Right, we're going to get $14,000 worth of need-based grants at the University of Michigan. Again, why is that? Well, if I want to click into the financial aid tab, it's going to tell me this is one of the University of Michigan is one of the public Ivies. Kind of a gross phrase, but whatever. Most public schools, right, they don't use the institutional methodology. They use the federal methodology, the exceptions, University of Michigan, UNC Chapel Hill, William and Mary, UVA, I think Cal Berkeley. I think those are the five, right? So they use the institutional methodology, which we saw as a range for this family. They meet 88% of need. So that's what's bringing us to our net price of 60,000. Now, for every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at projecting, well, what is this kid going to get, if anything? Now, we're projecting 0 at University of Michigan, even though it's a really smart kid. Okay, well, why is that? If we want to look at some of the admission stat again for some context, well, here's their average GPA, here's their average test scores. And although this is a really smart kid, it is incredibly difficult to get merit at the University of Michigan, right? And obviously, this is something that you could do for any school in the country. And kind of taking it a step further, as students and counselors are finalizing the list of schools, you can use this financial information and merit information to help give you some more ideas to round out your list, right? So if you're a kid, you want to be close to home, you want a small school, you know what you want to major in if you do, right? And you can put any number of filters here, but then I can just go say, based on those inputs, show me which ones of those will give me scholarship money. Right. So maybe Wheaton College wasn't on our list. But if we're going to get $42,000, let's take a closer look. Here's my alma mater, Stonehill. Maybe it wasn't on the list, but if they're going to give me 32 grand, regardless of my financial situation, let's look closer. If I am eligible for financial aid, I can sort just based on that. So MIT, man alive, is it hard to get into MIT? But here's some other colleges that are really good with need-based financial aid, that are checking the other admissions boxes that I'm looking for, that maybe it's a little bit easier to get into. So again, I think a really powerful part of the platform. I think that's it for me today. I gotta imagine you all are sick of hearing me talk. I'm sick of hearing me talk. We got another webinar later today, guys. It's just Wednesday. Okay, so we got to fortunately, Dunks, they should one of these days, man, I'd be so lucky. We're gonna get sponsored by Dunks right now. Right now it's just a labor of love until further notice. Okay, so yeah, great. Like I said, we just want to talk to you guys and just again be a sounding board. Like I said at the presentation with Peg when we were down there in Baltimore, right, talking about these FAFSA changes. I'm like, this is the tip of the spear, guys. It's like everybody's throwing their hands up. This is so unfair. It is. A lot of these things are unfair. It's like, what are we gonna do? Look around the room. This is, people are looking at us to say, help us do this, right? So this is what we want to do. This is what we do. Lean on us. And again, even if you don't want to have us into your school, lean on us as a sounding board. Say, I just had a parent that walked into, we have a dedicated email just for school counselors, counselor@collegeaidpro.com. Right? That is our bat line. And that is what we pay attention to big time and are very responsive. So even if you just want to have us again in your back pocket to make you look like rock stars, no problem. You know, say this family just walked into my office and said, should I take a home equity line? Here's my situation. If you want to answer that yourself, we will give you the answer and you can go present it to them. So anyways, appreciate the kind words. Every other Wednesday, 12 Eastern time. I did say for our Hawaii peeps, we might back it up, are likely going to back up one of these and go off schedule a little bit in the coming weeks here. But yeah, every other Wednesday at 12 o'clock, tune in. Please book a time to talk with me. And yeah, that's what we're here for. And yeah, we help families with every decision, right? We have a full team of experts. If you want more comprehensive financial guidance, we have CFAs, CFPs, you know, on our team that handle that stuff, right? If again, we have those that specialize in working with split household, divorce, separated families, kind of nasty situations that you run into, right? This uncooperative ex that won't fill out the FAFSA. What do we do here? Our biggest, you know, we have folks that specialize in stuff for veterans, GI bills and all that stuff, right? We have 2 veterans on our team that is their kind of niche within this niche. So anyways, we got answers for you regardless of what the question is. And thanks for tuning in. Again, you guys give a shit, right? That's why you're here, because you care and you're taking your time during the work week to try to get coached up and get a little bit better here. So appreciate you guys, and we'll see you.